My doctor said something to me last spring that I haven't stopped thinking about. He looked at my chart, looked at me and said, "Adeline, if everyone ate the way you eat, I'd be out of a job. Hospitals would be half empty." I laughed at him. I told him hospitals do a lot more than fix what people eat. But I understood what he meant, and by the end of this video, I think you will too. Stay with me until the end, because I'm going to give you one more thing before we're done. The oldest recipe in my family, the cheapest thing I make, the one people ask me about more than anything else I'm about to tell you. It takes 4 ingredients and about 10 minutes of real work. I'll show you exactly how. My name is Adeline Foster. Everyone calls me Addie. I am 101 years old. I still live in my own house. I still make my own breakfast. I still garden most mornings, weather permitting. I've outlived my husband, 2 of my siblings, and most of the doctors who ever treated me. I am not a nutritionist. I am not a scientist. I'm just a woman who has eaten breakfast, lunch, and dinner roughly 37,000 times, and somewhere in there I must have been doing a few things right. Here's what I want to do today. I want to walk you through exactly what I eat, exactly how I eat it, and exactly what I don't do, the same way I'd tell it to my own granddaughter, because I have told it to her more than once. And along the way, I'll tell you the truth. It's not just what's on the plate. There are researchers who've spent years studying people like me. Communities scattered around the world where living past 90, even past 100, isn't rare. It's almost expected. They call them the blue zones. Sardinia, Okinawa, a little island called Ikaria, a town in Costa Rica called Nicoya. I've read what they found, and a lot of it I recognized immediately because it's just how I grew up eating before anyone called it a science. Let's start with the morning. I do not eat a big breakfast, never have. Most mornings it's a soft-boiled egg, a slice of good bread, maybe some fruit if it's in season, sometimes just oats cooked slow on the stove, not out of a packet. I drink 1 cup of coffee, black, and I drink it sitting down, looking out the window, not standing at the counter, checking a clock. That last part matters more than people think. Eating standing up, eating fast, eating while you're doing 3 other things. Your body doesn't digest the same way. It doesn't know it's being fed. I've believed that for 80 years, long before anyone put it in a study, but they have studied it now. Slower eating is tied to better digestion and to people naturally stopping when they're actually full, instead of when the plate's empty. Which brings me to the rule I've followed longer than almost anything else in my life. On the island of Okinawa, there's an old saying the elders taught their children before every meal, harahachi-bu, eat until you're 80% full, not stuffed. Not even completely full, 80%. My mother taught me a version of this without ever hearing that phrase. She used to say, "Addie, leave the table a little bit hungry. If you're satisfied, you've had enough." I hated her for it as a girl. I wanted the extra spoonful. But I never once saw my mother sick with what people now call metabolic trouble, the sugar problems, the heart trouble that seems to follow overeating around like a shadow. Researchers looking at the longest-lived populations on Earth keep finding this same pattern, dressed up in different words in different cultures. Eat less than you want. Stop before you're full. It sounds almost too simple to matter. I promise you, it matters. If you looked at my plate on any given day, most of it would be plants, beans mostly, lentils, whatever vegetable is actually in season, not shipped in from somewhere far away and tasting like nothing. I eat meat, don't misunderstand me. I'm not telling you to give it up entirely, but it's not the center of my plate. It's the seasoning around the edges. A little fish, some chicken now and then. Red meat maybe once a week, if that. Every single one of those long-lived communities the researchers studied eats this way. heavy on beans and vegetables, light on meat. In Sardinia, they eat a certain kind of flatbread and drink a strong red wine in small amounts with their beans. In Nicoya, it's black beans and corn together nearly every day. Different foods, same shape to the plate, plants doing the heavy lifting. Meat as a guest at the table, not the host. When I was a girl, you simply couldn't get a tomato in January. Nobody could. So we didn't eat tomatoes in January, and nobody thought that was a hardship. It was just how the year worked. Summer had one set of foods, winter had another, and your body moved through the year with the garden instead of against it. I still shop that way, mostly out of habit now, more than necessity. Squash and root vegetables in the colder months. Whatever's ripe and cheap at the market in July. I've noticed over the decades that food picked at its peak and eaten close to when it was picked simply tastes like more. And I trust that a food which tastes like something is probably still holding on to whatever made it worth eating in the first place. A tomato flown in from 3,000 miles away in the dead of winter isn't really the same food anymore, whatever the label says. Before I tell you this part, let me say, this next one surprises people more than anything else in this video. Not because it's complicated, because it's the opposite. I drink water plain throughout the day, not because someone told me to hit a number of glasses, because I've simply always kept a cup near me, and I sip from it out of habit, the way some people keep reaching for their phone. In the afternoon, I make myself a pot of herbal tea. Sage sometimes, chamomile in the evening if my mind is busy and won't settle. My mother did this, her mother did this. In Ikaria, that little Greek island where people live astonishingly long, they drink something very close to it, wild herbs picked from the mountainside, brewed into tea every single afternoon for generations. Nobody there calls it medicine. It's just what you drink instead of what everyone else drinks. And what I never touch, or almost never, is soda. Not diet, not regular. I can count on one hand the times I've had a soda in the last 30 years. It never replaced water in my house, not once, and I think that matters more than people want it to, because it's such a small thing to give up and such an easy thing to keep drinking without noticing. I did not grow up with packaged food. We didn't have it. Everything came from a garden, a farm, or a kitchen, someone's kitchen, usually a woman's hands, usually mine or my mother's. I still cook almost everything myself. Not because I'm stubborn, though I probably am, because when you cook your own food, you know exactly what's in it. No hidden sugar, no preservatives with names I can't pronounce, no oil that's been sitting in a warehouse for months before it ever touched a pan. I use olive oil, real olive oil, the way my grandmother did. I ferment my own vegetables sometimes, a little cabbage, a little cucumber, the way people did before refrigerators, when fermenting was how you kept food edible through winter. It turns out that habit that started as necessity is one researchers now link to a healthier gut, and a healthier gut, their learning, touches almost everything else in the body. Sugar, I treat like a guest who's allowed to visit but never allowed to move in. A little honey, a piece of fruit for something sweet, not a spoonful of sugar in my coffee every single morning of my life. That adds up faster than people want to admit. I have never in my life stepped foot in a gym, not once. 101 years, not one gym membership. But I have gardened for 80 years. I have walked to the market instead of driving for most of my life, because for most of my life I didn't have a car. I have climbed the same staircase in my house every single day since 1962. My body has never known a day of sitting still, even though it's also never known a treadmill. This is one of the loudest findings in that longevity research, and I think it's the one people resist the most because it's inconvenient in a different way than exercise is inconvenient. It's not about forcing yourself through a hard workout 3 times a week. It's about never fully sitting down. Gardens instead of gyms, stairs instead of elevators, walking to a neighbor's house instead of texting them. The people who live longest aren't the ones who exercise hardest. They're the ones whose whole day simply requires their body to keep moving, gently, constantly, without ever really noticing it as exercise at all. I still get down on my knees in that garden most mornings between April and October. My daughter worries about it. She bought me one of those little garden stools with a cushion, and I use it maybe half the time, mostly to make her feel better. Getting down low and pushing back up over and over, weeding a row of beans. Nobody designed that as an exercise, but it moves nearly every part of an old body that a doctor would tell you to keep moving. I didn't choose gardening because I read that it was good for me. I chose it because I love tomatoes, and 40 years later, my knees and my heart seem to have benefited from a decision I made for entirely selfish reasons. I go to bed at the same time almost every single night. 9:30. Has been 9:30 for longer than I can properly remember. I don't own a television in my bedroom, never have. That room is for sleeping, and my body has known that for so many decades, it doesn't argue with me about it anymore. I didn't think much of this until my granddaughter, who is a nurse, told me that broken, inconsistent sleep is now something researchers tie to almost every kind of chronic illness they study. The heart, the memory, the mood, all of it. I just thought I was an old woman who liked her routine. Turns out the routine was doing more work than I realized. For 61 years, I ate dinner across the table from my husband, Frank, every single night unless one of us was traveling, and even then we tried to talk on the phone right around supper time, just so it still felt shared. Since he passed, I've made it a point never to eat dinner completely alone. My daughter comes Tuesdays and Thursdays. My neighbor Ruth comes most Sundays. On the nights nobody can come, I call my granddaughter and we eat together on the phone, the two of us just talking through a meal like we're at the same table. I didn't do this because a study told me to. I did it because eating alone every night felt like something was missing, and I was right to feel that way. Isolation is now something researchers treat almost as seriously as diet itself when they study who lives long and who doesn't. Loneliness wears the body down in ways that are hard to see and easy to underestimate. A shared meal isn't just about the food on the table. It's medicine of a different kind. If you've gotten this far, I hope something in here is landing for you or for someone you're already thinking of sending this to. Subscribing helps this reach more people who are trying to figure this out for someone they love. And that matters more to me than the number itself. Now let me tell you about the evenings, because that's where a lot of people, I think, quietly undo everything they did right all day. Here's the part almost nobody gets right, and I promise you it's not the food, it's the clock. My dinner is the smallest meal of my day, not the biggest. Most nights it's a vegetable soup or some beans with greens, maybe a small piece of fish. I eat it early, usually by 6, and then the kitchen is closed. No snacking in front of the television. No last bowl of something sweet before bed. There's a rhythm to this that shows up again and again in the research. Not a strict fast, nothing extreme, just a long, comfortable stretch overnight where the body isn't working on digesting anything. Give your body that quiet window every night and it seems to know what to do with it. I've given mine that window for as long as I can remember, long before intermittent fasting was a phrase anybody used. We just called it going to bed on a light stomach. I want to tell you something that has nothing to do with food because I don't think this whole picture makes sense without it. Every single one of those long-lived communities the researchers studied has some version of the same idea, a reason to keep going. In Okinawa, they call it ikigai, your reason for being. It doesn't have to be grand. Mine, for the last 30 years, has been my garden and my grandchildren, in roughly that order some mornings. I still wake up most days with something I'm looking forward to, a phone call, a tomato that's finally ready to pick, a visit from Ruth, people who who wake up with nothing pulling them out of bed, tend not to do as well, no matter how well they eat. Purpose isn't decoration on top of a long life. From what I've seen and from what the researchers keep finding, it might be one of the load-bearing walls. I lost my husband. I lost a son far too young, and I won't pretend that kind of grief ever fully leaves a person. I have plenty of reasons, if I wanted them, to be a bitter old woman. I chose not to be, and I mean chose, like a decision I made and remake most mornings. I keep a small notebook by my bed, and most nights I write down one thing from that day I was grateful for. Some nights it's small, a good tomato, a phone call from my granddaughter. Some nights I have to think harder to find it, but I always find something. Chronic stress, the kind that never lets up, wears on the body the same way bad food does, maybe worse. I'm not telling you grief or hardship can be diets away. I'm telling you that how you carry it day to day seems to matter for how long and how well you carry everything else. I know what some of you are thinking, because my own grandchildren have said it to my face. Addie, that's easy for you. You don't have a job. You don't have 3 kids to get to school. I understand that. I raised 4 children of my own while keeping this same kitchen running, so I won't pretend it was ever effortless. Here's what I'd say. You don't need to cook elaborate meals. My meals are simple. A pot of beans takes 10 minutes of actual work, then it just simmers while you live your life around it. A soup made on Sunday can feed you 3 nights that week. The goal was never to spend hours in the kitchen. The goal was just to know what was going into my body, most of the time, more days than not. Perfect was never the standard in this house. Consistent was, I don't eat processed sugar most days. I don't fry my food. I don't eat until I'm stuffed, even at the holidays, even when my daughter's pie is sitting right there tempting me. I don't sit still all day, and I don't eat dinner alone if I can help it, and I don't let a week go by without calling someone I love. But I want to be honest with you about something because I'd feel wrong leaving it out. I still see my doctor twice a year. I still get my blood pressure checked. I take one small medication, and I take it exactly as he tells me to. Eating well didn't make medicine unnecessary in my life. It made the years in between doctor visits better ones. Those are 2 different things. And I think it does people a disservice when someone my age acts like food alone is the whole story. It's the biggest piece. It is not the only piece. All right, I told you I'd give you this at the end, and I always keep my word, so here it is. This is my grandmother's bean and greens soup. She made it because it was cheap, dried beans, whatever greens were growing that week, a little garlic, a little olive oil, water, salt. That's the whole list. 4 or 5 ingredients, none of them expensive, all of them still sitting in most people's kitchens right now. You soak the beans overnight if you remember, or you don't if you forget. Either way, they still cook. You put them in a pot with water, a smashed clove of garlic, a good splash of olive oil, and you let them simmer low for an hour or 2 while you do something else with your day. Near the end, you throw in whatever greens you have, kale, chard, even the tops of beets that most people throw away. Salt it at the end, not the beginning, or the beans turn tough. That's it. That's the whole secret. It isn't fancy. It was never meant to be fancy. It was meant to feed a family through a winter when there wasn't much else in the house. And somehow, generations later, the researchers I mentioned earlier are studying dishes almost exactly like it. Sardinia's minestrone, Tuscany's ribollita, all built from the same idea: beans, greens, olive oil, and thyme. The poorest food my grandmother knew turned out to be some of the healthiest food anyone's ever eaten. I think that says something worth sitting with. If you remember nothing else from an old woman rambling at you for 25 minutes, remember this: eat plants more than you eat meat. Stop before you're full, not after. Cook your own food when you can. Move your body all day long instead of hard for 1 hour. Never eat alone if you can help it. And find something, however small, that gets you out of bed looking forward to the day. None of it is complicated. None of it requires a gym membership or a pill or a program with your picture on the box. It just requires doing it, most days, for a very long time. If this gave you even one thing to try this week, do 3 things for me before you go. Subscribe so the next video finds you instead of you having to go looking for it. Comment which one of these you're already doing and which one you're going to start tomorrow. I read every single one. And send this to the one person you thought of while I was talking tonight, not tomorrow. That's really what this channel is for. I think about my doctor's comment more than he probably meant for me to. Hospitals wouldn't really be empty. People need them for 1,000 reasons that have nothing to do with what's on their dinner plate. And I'd never want anyone watching this to skip a checkup because an old woman on the internet told them beans would save them. But I do think he was onto something true underneath the joke. So much of what fills those waiting rooms builds up slowly, one plate at a time, one missed walk at a time, one lonely dinner at a time. Over years, nobody's counting. That part, at least, is still in your hands. It was in mine for 101 years and counting. Take care of yourselves and leave the table a little bit hungry.